Once a month, we take one story connected to homelessness in America, and we go all the way in. The history, the policy, the people, the full picture, no spin. This month, we're starting with a program most people have heard of, and almost nobody actually understands. Section 8, the federal housing voucher program that was supposed to be America's answer to the affordable housing crisis.
How did it start? What was it actually designed to do? And how did we end up with millions of people on a wait list that stretches back to 2008? That's what we're getting into today. If you want to follow the whole series, subscribe to the City Relief newsletter. Link is below. It's free once a month. It's honestly the best first step you can take. All right, let's go.
Now, for most of American history, if you were poor and you needed a place to live, the market had nothing for you. Tenements, overcrowded rooming houses, neighborhoods without running water or heat. That was actually the reality for millions of working class Americans well into the 20th century.
The federal government eventually decided that was a problem worth solving. What they built and what they kept changing shaped every conversation about housing in America that came after. And today, nearly a century later, the consequences of those decisions are still playing out on the streets of every major city in the country.
The federal government's first serious attempt to address housing for low-income Americans came in 1937 with the Housing Act. The idea was direct. The government would build it. Public housing projects, owned and operated by local housing authorities, would give working families a decent and affordable place to live. And for a while, it worked. The early projects were genuinely well built, mixed income, some of the first racially integrated housing in cities across the country.
But by the 1950s, the model started to crack. Congress imposed strict income limits that pushed out working families and concentrated the deepest poverty in these buildings. Maintenance funding dried up. Private developers who saw public housing as competition lobbied successfully to isolate the projects in the poorest neighborhoods, far from jobs and good schools. What was designed as a ladder became a trap.
By the late 1960s, the federal government knew public housing wasn't working the way it was supposed to. Cities were in crisis. The Kerner Commission, appointed by President Johnson after the 1967 urban riots, they warned that America was moving toward two separate, unequal societies, and that housing was at the center of it.
Congress responded in 1968 with the Fair Housing Act, which banned racial discrimination in housing sales and rentals, a landmark moment. But enforcement was weak, and the structural damage was already done.
Then came 1974. President Nixon, dealing with a housing market in chaos and a deep skepticism of government-run programs, signed the Housing and Community Development Act. This is where Section 8 was born.
The logic was a departure from everything that came before. Instead of the government building and owning housing, the government would give low-income families a voucher and let the private market do the rest. You find your own apartment, you pay 30% of your income, the government covers the gap between that and fair market rent.
It was called the Housing Choice Voucher Program. Section 8 is just the section of the law it actually came from.
The idea was elegant. Give people mobility, let them move to better neighborhoods, better schools, better opportunities. Get the government out of the business of being a landlord.
So the voucher program launched in 1974. And in the years that followed, research started coming in that it could genuinely change lives.
The most famous study is called Moving to Opportunity. Starting in 1994, the federal government ran a randomized experiment. Low-income families in 5 cities were given vouchers specifically to move to low-poverty neighborhoods. The results, tracked over decades, were remarkable.
Children who moved to lower poverty neighborhoods before age 13 earned 31% more as adults. They were more likely to attend college, more likely to live in lower poverty neighborhoods themselves. The voucher, used the way it was designed to be used, genuinely broke intergenerational cycles of poverty.
But here's where history takes a turn.
From the very beginning, The voucher program was never funded to reach everyone who needed it. When Congress created Section 8, it made a quiet decision. This would be a discretionary program. Not an entitlement like Medicare or Social Security, where everyone who qualifies gets it, but a program where Congress decides each year how many families get help. And Congress has consistently chosen not most of them.
Through the Reagan years, HUD's budget was cut. Housing assistance went from a growth program to a program in managed retreat. The waiting lists that exist today have their roots in those cuts.
Then, in the 1990s, the program faced a different kind of pressure. Welfare reform under President Clinton reshaped the entire philosophy of federal assistance.
When I ran for president 4 years ago, I pledged to end welfare as we know it.
The message from Washington was clear. Government support should be temporary, conditional, tied to work requirements. Housing vouchers were largely protected from that shift, but the political environment around low-income assistance hardened permanently.
And through the 2000s, something structural happened that made the voucher program far harder to use.
Lawmakers in as many as 20 states plan to introduce bills that would let families use taxpayers' money for tuition in non-public schools, but it's a lot easier to submit such a bill than get it passed.
Rents rose and the voucher values didn't keep up. Landlords in high opportunity neighborhoods could easily rent to market rate tenants. There was no incentive to accept a voucher and no law in most states requiring them to.
By the time the 2008 financial crisis hit, the picture was stark. Millions of families had been foreclosed out of homes they owned. Rent spiked as demand for rentals surged, and the Section 8 waiting lists, already years long in most cities, now became generational.
Miami-Dade County opened its waiting list in 2008. They're still processing those applications today.
In 2024, New York City reopened its Section 8 waitlist for the first time in 15 years. 400,000 people applied in just 6 days. Not for a voucher, not for an apartment, just for a spot on the list.
That moment tells you everything about the distance between what Section 8 was designed to do and what it actually does today. Here's what the history tells us. The federal government has tried two major approaches to housing low-income Americans. The first, build it and own it, worked in some ways and failed badly in others, largely because Congress undermined it with funding cuts and had restrictive policies that trapped poverty in place instead of lifting people out of it.
The second approach, give people vouchers and let the market work, was built on a genuinely good idea. The research shows it can work, but it was never funded to scale. The private market was never required to participate, and the political will to make it work has eroded decade by decade.
What we now have is not the program that was designed in 1974. It's what's left after 50 years of political choices about who deserves help and how much.
At City Relief, we serve around 65,000 people a year. And when I talk to people in the street, people sleeping outside, people in shelters, people who've been waiting years for a voucher, the thing that strikes me is that they're not waiting because they gave up. They're waiting because a decision was made a long time ago that the program doesn't have to reach them. Understanding that history doesn't make the problem easier to solve, but it does mean we stop blaming the people caught inside of it. Section 8 is 50 years old this year.
It started as a promise that in the wealthiest country in the world, no one should have to sleep outside because they couldn't afford rent. That promise was real. The research proves the program can deliver on it.
But at every stage of its history, political decisions narrowed who it reached. Until today, eligible families get nothing.
So here's the question we want to leave you with. Knowing that history, knowing this wasn't an accident, what do you do with that?
We'll be back next month with another episode. Every story in this series connects to that same question. And the City Relief newsletter is how we keep the conversation going between episodes. It's free, and it goes deeper than what we can fit into a video. The link is below. Subscribe.
We'll see you next month.